the interviewers realized it's easier to teach someone how to be diplomatic, how to do all the diplomatic issues, other than teaching someone how to write and speak in German. So probably you can just take a minute and think about the skills that you have and how you can be able to use them in the different industries that you're going to get into. So like you learned how to use Azure, how can you be able to apply it in the different industries in fintech? How can you be able to apply Azure, etc. Then the other term is flexibility. Flexibility is now how you can be able to just adjust to changes without breaking, how you can be able to be a clay and not a glass, how you can, when changes come, how you can be able to change your skills, use what you have, and be able to change and find new ways of applying it. Instead of when change comes, you just left there and you're wondering, what can I do? And change passes you by and you're left there unemployed, nowhere to go, and you're like, what did I do wrong? It's because you are not able to blend in and bend and be flexible to the change. So I'll also quote someone here, Charles Darwin, and he says, it's not the fastest or the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable to change. So how are you adapting to change? How are you able to now make yourself blend in and bend without breaking? Okay, so why do we need to be adaptable? Why are these skills important? So I can mention 3 things why we need to be adaptable. And the first thing is openness, being open-minded, being able to experience new things without faltering, being able to go into new experiences without breaking your confidence, without losing your mind, just being able to find your place in new experiences. The other thing is team integration. So I'll need an example from you guys. So you get into a new team and you meet people from different and diverse places. So people have different backgrounds, people come from different parts of the world, you're working remotely. How do you deal with it? How do you deal getting into a new team and you're wondering how can you be able to integrate with them? So let me give an example, and you can also give your example on the chat. So I worked with a team of students from Nigeria and Kenya to build a product. So this is an example I'll use all through the presentation. So we worked to build a project for a 4-month hackathon in March this year. And one of the things I was tasked with was the team lead, as a team lead, is to be able to ensure the project is built, to be able to oversee the general experience of how the project will run, etc. And one of the things I realized was, for us Kenyans, we're very lenient with time. We can set up anytime, but for Nigerian students, it's very hard to find them available before 6 p.m. Nigerian time. And for us, past 8 p.m. Kenyan time, that's late. We need to, it's a culture that we have. All meetings should be before 8 p.m. Nigerian time. So we had to figure out a way of integrating both people, both individuals from the different countries, and find a way to hold stand-ups daily, but also ensure everyone is comfortable. So what we did was we sat down and everyone suggested the time they're most comfortable with, the time range. So the first person said from 7 p.m., the other person said from before 9 p.m., another person said at 6 p.m. So we sat down and now we had to discuss why wouldn't you be available at this time? And from there, we were able to now find a time that suited most of us. So yeah, you can take examples in the chat. What are ways you've been able to integrate with people from different communities? Okay. So the other thing is as you learn how to be adaptable to change, you also become a driver of change. change is needed because the world is changing. It's, as I've already mentioned, it's inevitable. Change will occur. So instead of waiting for change to happen, sometimes you need to be the driver of change. For instance, we have Netflix, and we used to have our old days, we used to use DVDs and CDs. When Netflix came in, no one really knew or anticipated the change that it will bring. Because right now you can watch movies at the comfort of your home. But previously, we used to go rent a movie, buy a CD or a DVD drive to be able to watch a movie. So as in the process of being adaptable, you also become a driver of change. And the last point is you also help others embrace change. You also help others to be able to work seamlessly with people from different communities to embrace the change. Okay, so the other thing is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is EQ in short, and it's the ability to be able to manage your emotions positively. One thing I learned about emotions is it's just energy in motion. It's energy you get to do things. So for instance, when you're happy, it's very easy for you to do things. When you're sad or angry, it's very easy to break the code that you're writing in production. So emotion gives you the energy to do things, but you also need to be able to effectively manage your emotions. One, to be able to work with other people, and two, to be able to know how you work best and how you work with other people. So that's about emotional intelligence. And one of the things emotional intelligence helps us to do is to be able to make decisions, solve problems, and communicate easily with others. And as I was researching through the talk, I came across a study, and it says that 75% of employers look for people who are more emotional intelligent rather than just who fit into the skill set listed. So you also need to have your emotions in check. You also need to know how you can be able to connect with other people and how you can be able to relate with people from different backgrounds, people who do not really know where you come in from. Yeah. So now let's go to the steps on how, let's go to the steps on how you can be able to adapt to change. And adapting to change, the acronym is EASE. So EASE stands for expecting change, being able to adapt to the change, surviving the change, and lastly, being able to examine the impact of the change. So four things is expecting the change, being able to adapt to the change, survive the change, and lastly, measuring the impact of the change. Okay, let's go to the first step. As we've already mentioned, change will occur. And for change to happen, you already know it's something that will happen. And one thing you should have in mind is you should be able to anticipate it. Know that, yes, change is coming. So how can I be able to anticipate the change? How can I be able to deal with the change? So back to my initial example, I led a team of 4 people, and as a team lead, you're the one giving the direction of how the team will go, determining what you'll do. So you enter into the scenario with an open mind. It was my first time leading a technical team, so being able to know how the front end and the back end will mix, it's also something you have be very open about because it's a new experience. Okay, so how does adapting to it come in? When we set out to work on the project, the first thing we did was to have a brainstorming session. And in the brainstorming session, we came up with an idea. So what do we want to build? So we decided we want to build a platform that does A, B, C, D. And from there, after deciding what the platform will do, you now come up with the different features the platform will do, and also the different user stories, what a user will do in the platform. So you already have a goal in mind of what you want to achieve. Having the goal is very important because you already know now what your aim is. And the other thing is when you already have a goal, getting there is now the easy thing. So you'll be able to ensure you ensure first you have a goal, a vision of where you want to go, and then getting there, it will fall into place. But it's not that you just, I have this goal I want to meet, but you don't plan about it. So ensure you also plan. Also write down, like for us, we wrote down the user stories, what the user will do. So having now the plan of what you're going to do is very essential. And the plans, the user stories we wrote down enabled us to ensure that we have the user in mind, we create the empathy, and remember that this product we're building is for the users. And lastly, the thing you should be able to know about plans is plans change. And sometimes you don't have control of situations you'll be in, and plans will change. So ensure you also have contingency plans. So like, let's say you're working on the back end and setting up takes longer than usual. So you're supposed to have the back end set up by sprint 1 and probably something's done. But by halfway into sprint 2, you don't have the back end set. So what changes will you have in place? So have also the limits of things you need to accomplish before the end of the period. Okay, the other part is embracing the change. So we already had the plans in place, we already had the user stories written down, we already had all the tasks planned, but things happen. And one of the things that happened to us was one teammate fell ill, so we are one developer less. We had already planned, we're using Azure DevOps to set up the project, and as the one in charge of it, but it was taking very long. Like halfway into the second week, we're still dealing with Azure and GitHub problems. So that's something that you should have it done even before you start the sprint. But DevOps was taking so long to work. And then the last part was we had set up our application to use Django, and our database was Cosmos DB. And after a few weeks, after 1 week, we realized that all our credits were almost done. So each person had $100 worth of credit, and one of the $100 was left at $2 because Cosmos DB ate everything up. I'm not sure what mistake we made when setting up the project, but yeah. Sorry. But yeah, so we had our Cosmos DB eating all the credits. So we had to think now, what are the next steps we take? And lastly, we had over-engineered our product. So, sorry. So we had expected to have half the features done, but we were struggling to finish the first feature in the second sprint. So we were wondering, will we even be able to finish 3 of the features that we had set out to do out of the 5 or more? So those are the things that happened in our project. So sometimes when you're building products, you face challenges that you never anticipated. So the first thing is you should acknowledge the changes you're facing, acknowledge the mistakes, the errors you made, and now from there, take steps to turn the changes to your advantage. So let me just give you a brief of what our team did. And as a team lead, obviously I had to do most of the work, but let me just take you through what we did. So the first thing was setting up DevOps. DevOps is ensuring your backend can be able to operate well, automating everything instead of you always going and updating everything at the backend, just to deploy directly to your site. So what we did, I had to ask other people to come and teach me how DevOps works. So I had people who had already been in the program before. I had calls with them, gather them together, and we were like, okay, teach me, how does DevOps work? Yeah, give me an example of what I can do. I'm using Django, and it's my very first time using Django with DevOps. I'd tried with Node.js, it worked. So why is this Django thing not working? So being able to find people who already are in that experience to be able to teach me how DevOps work. The second thing was we had been assigned coaches and mentors to guide us through the program. And I realized most of my team members were not aware of how GitHub works. Yes, they knew how GitHub works as an individual, but collaborating with others was a bit challenging. So we had to go to our mentors, ask them for guides on how best we can collaborate on GitHub, how best we can be able to find solutions on collaborating issues like how does code review work, how does one comment on their write effective commit messages that everyone will understand. Do you each work on your own separate branch and merge, or do you fork the repo, then create a PR when you're merging it? Yeah, things of that sort. And then the other thing was our teammate fell ill. And what we did was you are able to learn about empathy in real work environment. It was a hackathon, but we're also using it as a real work environment. When someone falls ill, you just don't sack them, or you don't just tell them, this is the end of your work period. No, you embrace that person. You say, yeah, sickness is part of life. So now you go sit down with your team and discuss, now the one developer less, so who can take up the role she was doing. So I had to learn Django. I had to know what Django is, create models, and we eventually were able to do the backend and finished. Then the last part is we're halfway into the hackathon and most of our features weren't done. So what did we do? So what I decided was we need to find a way to have some of the features done on a low-code environment. And Microsoft has this platform that's called a Power Platform. And you can be able to automate stuff and do things on a low-code environment without having to code everything from scratch. And it's very easy to learn. So within a week, someone can learn and be able to develop something. And the main drawback is that it's an organizational-based tool. So you can't use it for an external-facing tool, but an organizational tool. The good thing was the biggest challenge we had was creating an administration platform. So we were able to now use that platform, Power Platform, combining Power Apps and Power Automate to now create a platform in a low-code environment without having to code everything from scratch. And within a week, we were able to have the features done. So the last thing about change is once everything is done and dusted, you've already gone through all the stages, you've had change, you had a scenario, a picture of what might go wrong, and you had everything planned out. You faced the challenges, you took them by the horns and dealt with everything. So now the last part is reflecting, being able to sit down and ask yourself questions. Now, what was the impact of what we did? What were the emotions we faced? When we were stressed out, what did we do? What did we do wrong? What did we do right? What other ways can we have handled everything better? So sitting down and reflecting helps you learn about the different best practices you can be able to use. And one of the things I learned a lot during that process, and maybe I can give you some of the few things I learned was first, having a support system is very useful. So having people you can reach out to help you help you in your process is very useful. So now I have to sit down if I'm venturing into something new. Instead of me just going at it in the dark, you sometimes look for mentors or people who've already been there to guide you on what you're doing. The other thing was I learned collaborating is fun and working on projects with other people is very fun. So being able to now experience people from different cultures, people from Nigeria, people from different parts of Kenya, it's very essential. And our stand-ups, some of them we had just talking about our experiences, our lives. And it was very useful because you get to learn about people, you get to learn about different things. And the last thing I learned was when you're building an MVP, you don't have to build everything at once. You have to now focus on the small things. Don't just build everything, try and build 100 features at once. build the small things. That's what matters. Be specific on what you're building and now be able to use it to your advantage. So yeah, I've talked about the different processes. The first one is expect the change. So being able to anticipate change. Live life knowing things can change at any minute. Second is adapting to change. Adapting to change is now creating a plan. And with your plan, having your plan laid out, you can now be able to see what can you do, what goals can you have in place to ensure everything goes as planned. The other one is surviving. Yeah, you'll face change. You need to embrace that change. You need to survive the change. And the last one is sit down and reflect. After everything is done and dusted, sit down and reflect. Ensure you reflect on the change that happened. Okay, so now I want us to have an interactive session. I want us to now sit down and you've already covered what you need to do when you're facing change, the different emotional things, the different emotional intelligence, the different emotional aspects of it. And now I want us to discuss on something. So this is a scenario, and since we're doing both Zoom and YouTube Live, we can do it in breakout rooms, but I want us to now have it all in one place. So this is a scenario. So imagine a client. So you can take yourself as the client or the Azure engineer. So a client had an Azure engineer, and 2 weeks into the project, the client informs the engineer that they'll be using, instead of using Azure, they'll be using GCP. The engineer is comfortable with Azure, but has very little experience in GCP. Let us sit down, let us sink in. So you're a client or you're the engineer. And let's say, for instance, if you're the engineer, you worked with Azure, you've learned about Azure, you've done your Azure fundamentals exam, you've done even the second one, the associate exams and certification, and you've certified, you're good with Azure. But then working with a client, the client decides, no, you're not using Azure, but you're going to use GCP. So think about that process, think about that scenario. So we'll have questions about the scenario next. Okay, so now that you've been hired to do Azure, the project changed to GCP. So this is something that might happen. So the scenario might play out between the manager and the engineer. So probably explaining why they have to switch the cloud platform, explaining what necessitated the change, probably the cost, probably, I don't know, the needs changed. So now, then you have to discuss with the manager until you reach an agreement. So let me take you through the slides again. So you've been hired as an Azure engineer, or you hired someone as an Azure engineer. And 2 weeks into the project, the stack changed, the platform changed, and you're forced to change to GCP instead of Azure. And then, so the scenario plays out. So as the client, you have to sit down and talk with the engineer about the problem, why you have to switch, etc. So now, anyone who can imagine the scenario and for instance, what do you think the engineer the approach the engineer will take? What do you think the approach the developer will take? So you can just you can either unmute yourself or you can just type on the chat any ideas that you have. So maybe I can have, let me see. Maybe I can have Bello, you can go first. You can tell us what do you think will happen. Yes, Bello?
Okay, hi Bethany, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for the wonderful session. I really enjoyed learning how we can collaborate better. For me, change, as you have explained, is a constant and there is nothing casted in stone. So when, as a developer, you're in such, or as a DevOps engineer, you're in such scenario, I think how it should play out or how it is advised to play out is you first understand why your manager is first taking that approach. If you have another opinion, or let's say, for instance, after the manager has gone through the whole reasons why we need to switch to GCP, maybe it might be cost, it might be features that are available in GCP that are not in Azure, it might be compatibility with some of the things you are doing. If there are alternative solutions in the platform you are comfortable with and you have factual facts to back it up, you can propose. But if they are not, I think as someone that should adapt to change, the best approach is to accept. And since cloud is understanding cloud is not just adapting to a platform, I think they are all trying to achieve the same thing in terms of ease of scaling your infrastructure, managing security and everything. So it's something that I think it's easy to actually accept rather than, let's say, for instance, they're trying to change your language stack from maybe C# to Java. So I don't think it's a difficult scenario that much because all are still the same thing. Cloud is cloud. Probably both platforms will have Kubernetes or something that you're going to work with. They are going to be the same network securities that you're going to be doing, interfaces and everything. So I think it's a very easy scenario. Thank you.
Let me just leave you there for a while. So you said since it's just changing platform, it's easier. So what if you are changing languages? What if the language was switching from PHP to JavaScript? What will you do at that point?
Even at that point, I think no knowledge is what I've learned over time, or what most of people that I've learned from have actually taught some of us is no knowledge is a waste, whether it's just for a feature or for a project. So let's say, for instance, we are trying to work on a project, and at least from what I have learned so far in cloud, it's good to build the microservices than a monolith. So let's say for a particular feature in that application, a PHP framework or a PHP part does that microservice properly. And it's just around individual preferences. In as much as there is room to grow and there is time to adapt to that change, then it's easier to accept. But if you are now being put on like an odd say, like, oh, maybe they're trying to say we want a feature rollout like in 2 weeks, and they want that done like, and then it's a language that you have never used before. 2 weeks might be a little bit unrealistic, right? So you have to find a common ground and a balance between you and your manager to say, okay, to take me so number of weeks to get myself acclimatized with the language before I can start maybe researching on how to piece the features together. Yes, it's going to be difficult because you now have to start learning like a newbie, learning the whole syntax, how it works and everything. But change is change. And at the end of the day, you might just use it for that particular feature, but you'll be able to say, okay, I understand maybe PHP or I understand Java to an extent because I've used it before. So that's my own approach towards such changes.
Thank you so much, Bello. So you can have Oseni. You can also type on the chat what you think. So yeah. Oh, okay. Someone is asking. I repeat the question. You can go ahead, Oseni, as I share my screen again. Okay. It seems like he's not here. So Nassif, you can go ahead.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you, Becky, and the host for putting this seminar together, and really appreciate because I've really learned a lot just joining the session. So about the question, what's the approach I'm going to actually introduce is that I believe as an engineer, be it software or an AI engineer, you should always be flexible towards change. You should be a driver of change, as you said. So no matter looking at the platforms now, they contacted him for an Azure project, and now they are changing to Google Cloud Platform. So by changing it, it's even like, to me, I believe it is a benefit to the engineer that has been contracted to work, the Azure engineer, because an engineer should be an open-minded person. If you're not open-minded, you won't be able to innovate. Even though he has a little experience using GCP, it doesn't matter. So far, he's an expert using Azure. I believe all stacks, all architecture, all knowledge, they look similar. Just like you're using two OOPs. You're familiar with one, you're not that familiar with the other. So for the client to change it, so now looking at it, it's very tricky. But if the reasons presented by the client for changing his requirements or his client specific requirements, if it's something not that technical. So far, our own end goal as an engineer is to make sure that the end users of the product enjoy the service. They have a wonderful experience using it. So we have to actually review the reasons for changing the requirement that, oh, I don't want this platform again, I want this platform. So regardless, if I'm to put myself in the shoes of the Azure engineer, I will still go on with it. Because the client indirectly has actually given me an opportunity to innovate, to do things differently. Because as an engineer, I believe I'm an open-minded person, so I don't have to keep doing things the same way because I'm using Azure. I have to keep it. No, I can decide that even though the client does not even tell me that, oh, I want to change, I can decide that, oh, since he did not specify it like explicitly that he wants me to use Azure to achieve the product, I can just go to use GCP or use AWS. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nassif. So before I pick the third person, maybe I can give you a bit of more questions to think around. So you can think about what mindset that the developer have when they begin having their conversation on having to use GCP. And then sometimes probably as a developer, you face challenges where like you're fearful about the change. So you're fearful because, I'm very good with Azure, so why do I have to change to GCP? So what nervousness do you think is around them? And then if the developer is reluctant to change, the engineer is reluctant to change, what will it lead to? And lastly, what can the manager and the developer, what can the developer and the client do to ensure that they can be able to discuss about the expectation beforehand, because sometimes you have technical limitations that you might not be aware of, that the client may not be aware of, and you want them to be aware of before time. So maybe we can have Bright. Yeah, we can have Bright go next.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Bright.
All right. I'll try and treat just two of the questions. Well, Hosseini and Nassif have spoken quite a bit, and I want to listen to what they said. Thank you very much to for hosting this, and thank you for letting me be there. I was very enlightening.
Pardon?
So thank you very much for what you did. I was very enlightening.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, you're better. Right.
So you mentioned about expecting the changes. I've been led some projects, and I really love, and I've tried to use it. So when you talk about adapting, I normally try to create a system, not just for my own expectations, but for the expectations of the clients. So if the client wants to do this, okay, this is exactly what he wants to do, and this is how he wants to do. Okay, fine. But I know changes are constant. So what I try to do is I envisage, I try and bring up solutions that's just alternatives to what he wants to do. So in that sense, that's for me. Some of them, if the alternatives are better, I present it to him. Okay, why don't you try that? That's before even the project kicks off. Or if it keeps on going that way, there's no problem. But in my arsenals, I already have alternative directions, routes that he could go. And suggesting like that, maybe if there is a particular feature he wants to put in a particular project, I know that okay, this feature can only be possible through this and this. So for that alternative, I already have maybe somebody in my team that's already working on it. Okay, in case this person falls back on this, please, I want you to be ready with a solution. So, and I think that falls under what you talk about adapting. So you just create like a vision. Okay, what's possible? What are the possible routes in this direction? And I'm sure that if something like this challenge you brought up, it's pretty common. It's okay, I don't want to do this, I want to do this particular one. So there are some situations that can be more complex, but this one is a little bit, and I think having the alternative routes can be very, very wonderful. I don't know if you understood what I said.
Yeah, I've understood. Being able to set the expectations before you get into the client, you get into the project. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I can just read the one from the chat. So Hamid is saying the only constant thing in life is change, and bearing in mind you're using a user-centered approach to development, you can see it as a challenge. So take it as a challenge and also get help where necessary, since it will help you develop your skills in cloud and DevOps engineering. Then Canon is saying you'll have to bear in mind the time frame and the constraints that you have to be able to collectively come up with an agreement with everyone. Okay, so maybe I can take one last one. 1 minute. Waha, you can just take it with 1 minute. Tell us what your point of view is. Okay. I'm not sure if you can hear us. So let me go to the next person, Odigi.
Okay, when you say talking to me, I thought you were throwing the question to the house.
Pardon?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening,
1
everyone.
minute. Yeah.
So I'll be fast with this. Ideally, we know that what your client wants is what they want, and you try as much as possible to give them the best because you want to get a good feedback from these people, talking about experience. Now, if they choose a different platform, the first thing that comes to mind as an engineer is for you to compare both and see your strengths and weaknesses. Where are the points of challenges and where you have the strength. Now, when you are going into a discussion with these people, manager expectation is very, very important. And you are going there prepared to tell them, if there's going to be some sort of delay in terms of delivery time, you are telling them there will be some delay in delivery time because this what we are using is changing and have to do this, do that. And you are setting the right expectations so that at the end of the day, customer does not feel that, they are getting something less than what they expected. Secondly, because you are changing to a different platform, it is good. I understand the fact that everyone has been talking about, you can easily go and learn and all that. But I'm restricting my own contribution to the aspect of soft skills, you trying to manage a customer when changes arises. So if I'm to restrict it to the soft skills aspect, I don't want to really talk about you going to go and get more skill. Let's assume that because of some inadequacies in the use of GCP, because you are not an expert in it, let's assume that some areas of the product might not, really reach some set of expectations. It is at that point that you are also presenting this to the customer in a very, very professional manner so that they understand what is on the table before you even start the project. I think that's the way I will go. And when it comes to reluctance to change, I think this is something that one needs to work on even before you start getting projects. So it shouldn't even be a question because change is constant. We would always have changes. You know, you can even be at the middle of the project before the customer comes back to tell you, hey, we are changing this and changing this. And it is why we adopt the agile method of, you know, project management today. You want to be delivering projects by bits, and so that you can accommodate changes. So that's just my contributions.
Thank you, Digi. So what he said is being able to now ensure you're able to adapt to change. Sometimes it's better to work with the platform you have. Sometimes you can switch depending on your skills, depending on the circumstances you're in. So thank you so much, everyone who contributed. And before I conclude, 2 things that I can say you should be able to look into when you're looking into adapting is first, ensure you're well informed. Ensure when you're getting into a project, when you're getting into a platform, you're well informed. You learn constantly, ensure you constantly learn new things, explore. Yeah, just explore. Don't just limit yourself to the scenario you're in. Secondly, have friends and mentors and a support system that will help you build your skills, that will help you answer the questions, the hard questions that you have, like, is it really necessary to switch to GCP? Just have people who you can be able to rely to. So the last part is a video. So I think I'll share this slide with you at the end. So you can be able to watch this video by Daniel Goleman about emotional maturity, how you can also deal with changes, be self-aware, and deal with changes in the workplace. So thank you so much, everyone. I've been Bethany Jepchumba, and I'll give it back to Cliff to wrap it up. And also, in case you have any questions about the slides, about the program, yeah, you can just post them in the chat. And yeah, Cliff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bethany. It has been a really informative session. And also, I'm in love with your slides. I think you're teaching me how to do your slides. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for joining the session. Thank you, all those who've answered their questions, even though your question has not been answered. But I'm sure Bethany has captured everything. And you've learned a lot. And also the guys on YouTube, thank you for joining there on YouTube. And also, I hope you guys have a nice day, and hope to see you next time. Thank you, everyone. Bye.